Welcome to Building Emotional Intelligence. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to Frank, who's had a very long and troubled history. Frank is wanting to express his history so people understand what it's like and hopefully learn from it. So Frank started off with a very troubled and very isolated childhood. He also ended up with a life of addiction due to depression and lots of rumination that he suffered as a result of his childhood and unresolved emotional issues that arose through that. Eventually, Frank ended up in jail, and somewhere in his time in jail, he clicked that his emotions were causing him a lot of troubles, and he had to do something about that. And he came out of jail and didn't know where to turn exactly. He contacted my Building Emotional Intelligence meetup group, and we started interacting. So Frank has managed to turn his life around very dramatically, developed greater understanding of his emotions, and built his skills around his emotions, and created some major changes. So this is the main interview where he gives his life history, aspects of his life history, and some of the changes he's made. At this point in time, there are two other smaller interviews about specific events where he made big differences. And I think I would highly recommend that you have a look at those, because they're very insightful and they're quite remarkable stories on his part in terms of what he's been able to achieve. So with that introduction, I'll hand over to Frank to tell his story.
From a very, very young age, probably 10 or 11, it was when my mother and father separated, and through that I learned to start ruminating, because I never had anyone to talk to about how I was feeling, and I learned to bottle things up, and that just becomes the normal way of dealing with situations that I didn't like. So there was nobody around who I could talk to about how I was feeling. So this rumination, it just becomes the normal way of dealing with things, and it also progressed into drug addiction and alcohol addiction, because of bottling things up and ruminating about things. That was the only way I felt good. There was a lot of neglection through my parents. Couldn't talk to them about anything. And when I did try to open up and talk about how I was feeling, my mum would get a hiding from my stepdad, and he would say that she was making us weak or turning us into girls, basically. So for mum not to get a hiding, well, she basically just left us to our own devices, so she wouldn't get a hiding. So it just become a norm. It just seemed to reinforce this bad behaviour, this rumination, the drugs, the alcohol, the anxiety, the depression, and that was how I dealt with things. And when it got too much, it used to come out in ways where it was very nasty, very aggressive, very angry, uh, more drug taking, more alcohol, just to get away with the things I wasn't being able to talk about to anyone. And that was for quite a long time. I'm talking about 20, 25 years. And that just becomes a go-to, whenever anything come up. It just become automatic. I would just, withdraw, bottle up how I was feeling. I couldn't express myself. I didn't know what my needs were or anything. I just got taught from a very young age to bottle everything up, and I had to deal with everything myself, that there was nobody there to support me or help me. So yeah, it just become my default.
So you had, you were at that stage, you were living right out in the country, and had no contact with other people. And so you were within a family where your parents were quite dysfunctional and weren't able to support your development. So, and you've got other siblings as well that were there. So it was, I guess it was emotionally very confusing and very difficult to deal with, yet you had nobody that could guide you through, that could give you some direction as to what was happening and how to deal with it. So you had to try and find strategies yourself at that age, which is, I imagine, very, very hard to figure something out, how to deal with it.
Yeah. We were left to our own devices, and I just learned from a very young age that I had to deal with it myself. And having no experience, well, it all kind of led to other bad habits, drug taking and alcohol, and then
this is when you were older, because of the lack of support in terms of emotional development and not having any strategies dealing with the hurt and the emotions that would come up because of that upbringing of yours. I guess for many decades, that was your default behaviour in terms of dealing with it, because there was no apparent other way of dealing with it.
No, that's all. That's how I knew to do things. Like, it just become the norm for me. That was my go-to. If anything happened, it's automatic. Bottle things up, and in turn start to ruminate about things, making me very angry at times, very resentful, depressed, anxious, and then I would explode, very aggressive, yell and scream, because I didn't really know how to talk about my feelings or talk about my needs. I never had the chance to really discover what my needs were, or how I felt, because I was always affected by drugs and always affected by alcohol. So very very confused, and I wasn't really thinking clearly. So I just didn't know what my needs were, and I didn't know how to express my feelings properly. And it would always come out in ways, of aggression and resentment and ruminating more and more. And I mean, some days it'll take me 3 days, 3 days where I'd just be ruminating, and then take another few days for me to calm down because of that. So in turn, this rumination caused me a lot of problems. It caused so many other things, anxiety and just feeling like there was no hope and no way out, really.
Mm. And so somewhere along the way things changed, and you've made significant changes in your life, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So I guess if you could describe where you're at now, what's happening for you now and how things are different.
Okay, how things are for me now. After my second stint in jail, the first time I got 8 months, and the second time I got 4 years. And it gave me the opportunity to find out what my problems were by doing a program in jail. And through that, I started to understand what was going on for me. And it also gave me a chance to get off the alcohol and get off the drugs, and made my mind a lot more clearer. So I could understand. So once I was clean and started to begin to realize what was happening and how this type of behavior was very unhealthy, I just had a very strong urge to find out more. I was very intrigued about what was going on for me, and basically I was just fed up with how my life was. That really motivated me to find out more. Coming out of jail, I just happened to meet Herbert looking through the meetup and the emotional learning, and I knew that I was way behind everybody else, because I never got an opportunity in my past to really discover who I was or what was going on. So through Herbert, I started to understand about feelings, and actually naming them feelings, and also realizing that that everybody has needs, and that these needs need to be fulfilled, or to find out, I suppose, what my needs actually were. I didn't know any of this. I didn't even know we had needs. And it's where I learned about my triggers, and started really, now that I was off the drugs and alcohol and a lot more clearer, I was able to start to name how I was feeling, and started to recognize my needs and work on my triggers. So, and I joined up with other places as well, psychologists. I was going to class and learning about anxiety, depression, ruminating, and working on other techniques to deal with all that stuff. I didn't realize that I was using drugs and alcohol as an avoidance coping. To me, that was the only thing that made me feel good. So that then doing these classes and just being off drugs and alcohol, I become to realize that that's what the drugs and alcohol were doing. It was avoiding my problem. So, yeah, when I started to learn about these things and learn about techniques, it was adding them into my life. But I would still sometimes go back to my default because to me that was just automatic. As soon as something triggered me, I would notice that I would go back to my default of ruminating, getting angry, getting upset. But then I would sit down later on and realise or read up about what I learned in class and realise that there was another way. But I mean, that took a couple of goes before I started to get that. And I knew there was a lot of reinforcement to get these bad habits that I had. So I knew that it was going to be a lot of reinforcing to get healthy ones. So I've been doing classes, and I've been doing them again for the second time just to reinforce all this bad behaviour into good, healthy behaviour.
So can I just clarify there? You, in the end, chose a number of mindfulness-based classes to go through, which you found really spoke to you and found there was a lot of stuff that you could work with and that made sense to you, and you've gone and repeated that. So you found that really, really useful.
Yep. When I got out of jail the second time, very low self-esteem, but I just had this hunger to find out what was going on with me and how I could change this bad behaviour. But having low self-esteem kind of made it a little bit hard because I would regress and then back to my default. But then learning these things in class about that behaviour, I knew that that was unhealthy. So I learned a lot of mindfulness techniques to deal with these negative thoughts. And what helped me with my low self-esteem was to work out what I enjoyed. So I got into a few hobbies which I was interested in, and through that I began to feel much better about myself, and knew that I had skills, and so it did boost my self-esteem, and it helped me to feel better and get through these stints of depression and to stop the negative thought, and to realise I had skills. So that's whenever I was triggered by something that someone said about me, I would still go back to my default because, I was just so used to that, and I was never. It just felt so weird and so strange to do it another way because I was just not used to that. That kind of did rattle me a bit. Because I would always think that there was going to be some confrontation through expressing my needs and triggers, and I just didn't really want that. So I was stuck there for a little while, but Herbert helped me through one event where the landlord where I was staying at, he offered me a job, and I said, yeah, okay. But then one day he said a few things that really triggered me, and I noticed. I went upstairs and started to ruminate about what he had said, and it upset me. But then I just went straight back to my default, started ruminating and resenting him. And so I think you called me, Herbert, or did I call you? No.
Yeah, I happened to call you at that stage. You weren't into the habit of calling me because that was part of your default behavior to pull into your shell because that felt safe, and you didn't really reach out. It sort of required me to make contact with you and to, find out what was happening for you. You didn't have that ability at that stage to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah. I mean, it just felt so weird, and I would think that.
I guess it's a trust thing too. You've never had that ability. You've never had the experience of being able to reach out to somebody and ask for help. So it's trust in yourself that it'll work out, and trust in the other person that they will be able to help. So that's a big barrier there that you've now overcome. So, sorry, continue with your story.
So when you called me and the work that we did beforehand about recognizing my needs, my triggers, and then having that, you showed me a way out where as soon as you said it, I thought, oh, geez, this would be great.
So what we did, if I can help there, what we did is we worked out what your needs were in the situation, and you became conscious of those needs and had clarity of that. And then we swapped perspective and worked on what the other person's needs were. And you figured out that their needs were very much like your needs. And that was a blow-away moment for you. And then we worked on strategies in terms of you might use to communicate with the person. And essentially the strategy we came up with was you would communicate on needs, express your needs and reflect his needs. And I'll hand back to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So when Herbert suggested how I could, stop my ruminating and sort this problem out. I mean, it was very scary for me because I approached everything very angry and very loud, and I had never done this before. So I was very scared of how how this would go. So, and I come to realise that I had to be in a very calm state first. So practicing my mindfulness skills and breathing techniques and helped me with my anxiety, stop my head from racing and trying to prevent me from fixing this. So yeah, when I was at a calmer state, I was able to approach this other person and express what I was needing, and I was able to stay calm, listen to his needs, and when that happened, I just felt so uplifted because, I mean, it worked out well. I was really surprised and happy, and yeah, I kind of even like felt the glow. I had never done that before. I never got that kind of result before. It was always yelling and screaming, and yeah, so that felt very strange. Yeah, so it opened up my eyes, and I started to find hope, I guess, that I could help myself to, stop this rumination. And I actually could see a way out just by doing it this way, and actually taking notice of my feeling and my anxiety, just to slow things down, stay away from the negative thoughts by doing mindfulness techniques. And yeah, so
Okay, so yeah, I was blown away by your willingness to take it on board and actually to implement it and to approach this person. And as you say, it was quite a challenge for you to go in and do that, and you actually did it, and you got a wonderful result. You saw the power of using feelings and needs, and that sort of reinforced your trust in the technique, and you've continued on with that. Another aspect that I'd like to talk about a little bit was you had a lot of rumination around your family situation, and especially around your mother. So there was a lot of rumination going on there, and it was pretty endless. So we did some work around feelings and needs around that situation, that scenario. Maybe you could share what happened for you there.
yeah, I suppose so. Again, just feeling a lot of resentment that we got neglected, and just felt like that my mum was more interested in the alcohol and not of us. So that just gave me all these angry feelings about my mother, and again, not being able to talk about how I was feeling because there was nobody there that would listen, that wanted to listen. So yeah, that happened for quite a few years, holding on to that resentment, ruminating, causing me a lot of problems. But then when I started to work on my feelings and needs, Herbert suggested one day to do like an autobiography. So, so I did that, and Herbert said just look out for any triggers and what needs there might have been. So yeah, when I got into doing the autobiography, I could start to name what I was feeling and also what my needs were, and it also helped me with the resentment that I had, because I was able to put myself in my mum's shoes and really recognise what she was feeling, what she was going through, and why she acted the way she did. For instance, Mum couldn't pay us any attention because when she would get a hiding. So, I mean, that took away that resentment, and then recognising my needs and how I was feeling, I was able to talk about that with Mum much later in life, when Mum had given up the alcohol and I was off the drugs, which was only last year. So I was able to express what I was needing and how I was feeling about things, and it gave Mum a chance to talk about what was going on for her. So that done a lot of healing about that. So that actually stopped that rumination. But I wasn't avoiding it anymore. I wasn't using drugs and alcohol to avoid things. And I noticed once I dealt with them, well, then that just went away. Once I knew what I was needing and was able to express how I was feeling and what I was needing, all that rumination just went away and just stopped all that. So, yeah, it was very helpful.
Yeah, it created a huge change in you to have relief from that rumination. And I must mention, I find the ongoing work that you've been doing with yourself and taking responsibility for doing it has just been remarkable. And I want to mention that despite this long history within the family, you're actually able to, this last Christmas, bring the family together for Christmas get-together. And even there's a story where I think 2 or 3 weeks after Christmas I rang you up, or yeah, that's right, I rang you up to check in with you and you didn't answer. And 2 minutes later I got a message from you saying I'm in with where your brother lives, and the message was I'm with at my brother's place. I am with my mother and brother, and we're watching a movie. And I was blown away by that. I mean, what you were able to achieve, bringing the family together despite the hugely painful past, is truly remarkable. You know, it shows what you've been able to achieve. And you found, once you got started on this, you found your way forward in this, what made sense to you along the way. And so you did the journaling for a while, your autobiography autobiography for a while, and in a very short time. And I think in about 2 or 3 weeks, you sort of wrote from an early age up to, I think it was 16 years of age.
Yeah.
And then you just stopped. And I thought it would continue on, but it didn't. So obviously it met your need at that stage.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you moved on to something else to take you forward there. So you had your own internal sense in terms of what you needed at this particular moment as you developed along the way.
Yeah, well, that kind of helped me with how I was feeling towards Mum. Very resentful about the neglect that we got as children. And by doing my autobiography and putting myself in her shoes, or you could say working out her needs and what was going on for her, it helped me with that resentment, because I could see that my mum had a hard time and she couldn't. She wasn't in a position to help us because she was worried about her own safety.
Mm.
So that lifted all that resentment and took that away.
Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I did get what I need from doing that journaling. Yeah, that was great. That took that, them bad feelings away.
Yeah.
So that was something else that, I achieved. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the journey continues. A few things that have really stood out for me is your determination and persistence, and your ability to learn, and your ability to just try out different things. Like, as you said, that with that landlord, that incident there, it was there were a lot of emotions coming up around that, negative emotions, and especially doing something different. But you did it all the same, and the impacts were huge for you in terms of relearning how to respond to situations. So I guess those are really key characteristics to be able to make change and ongoing change. And I guess you're going to be continuing that journey now that you've found how it works, and where you go next, I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll stay in contact on this. But yeah, it's an ongoing process that you're taking responsibility for and you're learning about, and it's creating so much change for you.
Yeah, definitely. So now when things happen for me, when I feel triggered and overwhelmed, I've got a support network that I can fall back on, including you, Herbert. You've helped me along the way. It's been great. And now I'm able to talk about what I have difficulties with, and in turn I get advice and then try different things. So yeah, it's kind of a lifelong journey, and just dealing with things as they come up and not get overwhelmed, controlling my anxiety, recognizing my feelings and my needs and triggers. And then being able to have someone in your life who will listen and support you is great, is everything. It's really wonderful. I've never had that before.
Okay, Frank, thank you very much for sharing your experience, and I find it very inspirational what you've been able to achieve for yourself, and I hope others find it as well and find elements in your story that make sense, and hopefully people have some hope in terms of changing where they're at in their lives. So thank you very much for sharing.
but not a problem. And just to say, you know, that there is a way out. Doesn't matter how you feel. If you know, you have the determination just to put yourself out there and tell people how you feel, and you'll get the help that you want. Definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.